Hey, that means I'm on. Hopefully everybody can hear me. We had a slight problem with mics. Hello everybody, welcome to the Atheist Experience live from Dillahunty International Studios. I don't even know what the hell the date is today because I don't have, it's
28th.
Sunday, June 28th, 2009. We're live. It's like 4:31 p.m. Central. We started just a little bit late because of a mic problem. Hopefully everybody can hear me. If not, we'll change some stuff next week. Who knows? So I'm Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week, Don Baker. How you doing?
Good to be here.
Welcome.
To the
You've never been to the
yes,
to the palace.
To the luxurious international
this spacious resort that there's just so much room.
But I have pictures.
There's like, I don't know, looks like 50, 60 people out there in the studio audience.
Yeah, live audience even.
In my imaginary dreamland. We are cramped into a rather small spot, and we don't give a damn. Because we're going to do a show no matter what. As a reminder, we'll be on again next week. Russell Glasser will be here, I hope. And the week after that is no show.
No show?
I'll be at the amazing meeting.
Oh, somebody can do the show without you, right?
Yes. And exactly how are they going to pack up all of this equipment and move it somewhere else?
Well,
and, it's a nightmare.
Okay.
But yeah, as long as we're doing the show from my place, if I'm not here, there's no show. So how's everybody doing? As a reminder, we're still taking calls, but we do it slightly different, and we're going to start slightly later today over Skype. Skype is a voice over IP application that you can install on your computer. If you go to skype.com, that's SKYPE, you can download the software, set up an account, and then you can add add a contact to your Skype list. That's Atheist TV. That's ATHEIST TV, no spaces. And we'll add you. Do not make calls to that account. No calls made to Atheist TV will ever be answered on the show. Ever. Serious. So get that out of your head that you're going to call in. What you need to do is actually, after you've got it added to the contact list, just send an instant message. Joe is sitting over there running our audio board and the Skype machine.
Hey, Joe.
You can send an instant message. What you'll need to include is your name, where you are, what you want to talk about. He'll add you to a queue, and as soon as we start taking calls, we'll try to get to as many people as we can in the time allotted. There's a huge problem. People have been really happy with the way the show's gone because we kept going. The audio's generally pretty good, although I'm none too happy with the new mics, the mics we borrowed. But they're more convenient than the handheld mics, so we're making trade-offs. Skype has given us better call quality than what we were getting in the studio with the telephone hybrid. I also have a telephone hybrid here, but I'm not giving out my number to the world. Sorry. You just can't have it.
You mean they can't call you from Europe in the middle of the morning? Okay.
So,
by the way, all those instructions are on our website if
yeah.
you'd like to go read it there.
We're sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. You can find out more about the ACA by going to the website, www.atheist-community.org. You can find out more about the TV show by going to www.atheist-experience.com. And that's where you can find the instructions about how to watch the show live on Ustream, as well as how to connect via Skype to the show. A couple things to remember. I mean, people have been really happy that we kept the show going and that the call quality is good. And they're like, just keep doing it from there. That's not going to happen. When the studio reopens, we will be out of my place and back into the studio. What we may look into is, if we've got good internet access, having the option of Skype calls as well. We can't make any promises.
We're going to have some new equipment in the studio. We'll have to see what's going to be there.
There are also problems with Skype. For one, it's a nightmare to manage. In the TV studio, we have a telephone hybrid switch box that has 3 phone lines, and so
naturally queues up calls for us.
Yes, we take 3 calls. We have 3 lines, and that's why you'll get a busy signal if those lines are full. In Skype, we have a list of contacts that is, I don't know, in the hundreds now, and all of them are sending. Well, not all of them. A good chunk of them are sending in instant messages trying to get on the show. We're on for 90 minutes.
I'm going to piss a lot of them off today.
Don is going to frustrate some of you because he actually brought a topic to talk about.
Oh, no.
And so we'll be doing that. So we'll probably get to fewer callers, which means if you don't get through over Skype, if you're not one of the lucky few who get selected to actually be called during the show, don't freak out or panic. We'll try to do... if this turns out to be long term, or if it turns out to be a solution that we use if and when a studio ever closes, we'll come up with something better, a better way to queue people up so that it's not.
Yeah, this is very makeshift.
Yeah.
This couple months in the summer.
As Martin said, this is very guerrilla TV. You can tell by the lighting and the weird shadows and everything. But so that's what's going on with the show. We're going to continue. No guarantee how many calls we're going to get to or who we're going to get to. Tough it out. But if you don't get through on the phone, you can email tv@atheist-community.org. That goes to myself, most of the co-hosts, most of the people behind the scenes. We can't possibly respond to all of them, just like we can't. There's no way Joe's going to be able to respond to all the IMs that come in today. It's just not even feasible.
Yeah.
So don't feel slighted if you didn't get through. It wasn't that we thought
We're just too darn popular.
It's not that we thought your topic sucked or that we didn't like you. It's just that we're flying by the seat of our pants here. Mm-hmm. So, how you doing?
Doing good. It's good
Cool.
Good to see you. Tried to do a bike ride yesterday, but we have like over 100-degree weather and bad news.
It started. It was freaky because it was comfortable around here, in the 80s and everything. And of course, I was working all day, so I didn't know how hot it was during the day. And the last week, it's been 101, 102, 104.
Yeah, it's insanely hot.
But oddly enough, I'm not as bothered by it. It's not the kind of unbearable humid heat that you'd get in other places. But
yeah, maybe we're getting used to it. I don't know.
It's you wouldn't have caught me out on a bike yesterday.
I had 2 flat tires. I was definitely out.
So I'm not going to do all the regular announcements. We are planning on going to dinner after the show at Pluckers at Lakeline Mall. Same as we did 2 weeks ago, and technically last week. Last week we said we weren't going to go because it was Father's Day and we didn't want to drag people out. But me and Joe and Kathleen went anyway.
You went anyway, okay.
To get a bite to eat because I was hungry.
How many people are you getting down there?
I think there was 3, 6. There was like 9 or 10.
It's not too bad.
First day, I think. Although it was, there's 4 of us here now, so
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah.
Regular announcements. In addition to this show, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio podcast called The Nonprofits. You can go to nonprofitsradio.com for more information. That's PROPHETS.PHETSradio.com. We did a live show yesterday. It was actually Schilling's last show for a while. He's going to be leaving the Austin area. We're not sure when he'll be back or if he'll be back.
We're going to miss him.
Yep. Whenever. He was a great asset to the show and is a good friend of mine. I think we just lost the stream.
Okay.
What were you doing, Frank?
Graphics. Pull me back up.
It's okay.
Here, it went completely away again.
So for those of you who are watching the DVD version or the downloaded version, you're getting to see something that even the people who tuned in over the interwebs didn't get to see.
Yeah. This is a good time for more announcements, actually.
So the other announcement is that we host a lecture series the first Sunday of every month. The July lecture series is actually going to be an ACA membership event with some kind of panel discussion that I don't know anything about because I'm not going to be a part of it. I won't be there. I'll be in Vegas, baby.
Okay.
Vegas. And the August lecture is going to be Chris Comer, who was supposed to be here
Yes.
in June.
Yes, the mysterious Chris Comer.
Yes. So there's more information about that, all that stuff at the ACA website. And I'm not going to bore anybody with any more announcements. You can come down to the Dog and Duck on Thursdays for happy hour, 7 o'clock, 17th of Guadalupe. Take it away. Done.
Okay. Well, last time I was on, I was talking about Geneisis and the greatest hits from the Bible, and I was focusing on Genesis for various reasons.
Greatest
and
hits,
Yeah,
Some
that sort of
people
thing. It was a pun, right? It's like the greatest impact.
Look, I was trying to get off camera.
Okay, you can get your drink in. And we had a really long call. I don't know if you remember, but about some video thing, and so I didn't get too much of the topic. So I wanted to try to finish it up today and talk about the rest of the stuff from Genesis. Now, our view is that the Bible is mostly silly stories taken way too seriously, and I'll give a caveat that I'm not a biblical scholar. The last time we talked about how a number of religions get their start in Genesis or draw their roots back to Genesis, and all of these religions hook into these kind of silly stories, and we have Judaism, and we have Christianity, Islam, Mormonism, and Raelianism all have hooks back into Genesis, and I talked about that last time, so I don't want to hit that today. Today I'd like to talk about other stories from Genesis, stories that are used to blame and control people, and justified thuggery, which I think are two very negative impacts from the Bible. And also, if we have time, just talk about some of the just so stories that are in there. The stories that are used to blame and control people, if you can almost take a laundry list here. We have stories that blame and try to control women. We have stories that blame and try to control blacks. We have stories that blame and try to control gays, and stories that blame and try to control horny people even. Who knew?
I know some horny people.
You know some horny people. And Matt's going to do some readings, dramatic readings for us, because he's really good at that, right?
I don't have my good Bible here, so I'll be reading from the King James.
King James, okay. Well, let's talk about
some people would say.
original sin. So Eve gets disproportionately blamed for eating the apple, because she was kind of framed, right? She ate this. She was not told about the eating of the tree of knowledge, good and evil, right? But she got some fruit and gave it to Adam, and she got blamed. And the blaming. Let's see. You want to read 3:6, verse 6?
And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant for the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took the fruit thereof and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat.
Okay. And then what happens is verse 16.
Dun dun dun. I have so many notes in my Bible, it's on a whole other page. Unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and the desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee.
Okay.
That's a good verse.
Yeah. So women are sort of the framed here for this thing in this goofy story, right? And so
Maybe entrapment's a better word.
entrapment, right?
It's not framed. I mean,
Well-
it says she did it, she did it.
Well, she did it in the story, but that shouldn't involve humans in real life, right?
Oh.
So women, among other things, are given are sort of penalized. All women, gets back to this category error problem, are penalized for the pain of childbirth. And for many centuries, religious people had very little sympathy for the pain of childbirth for women, and they just sort of had to suffer through it. And women are painted as inherently disobedient and untrustworthy and all these things. So let's move on to the Hamites. Who are the Hamites? This is Genesis 9, if you want to start to dial that up.
One of the Marx brothers.
So this is fast forwarding to after Noah gets off the ark and he's hanging out. Start with verse 20 through 25 or so.
Noah's sin. And Noah began to be a farmer, and he planted a vineyard. And he drank of the wine and became drunk, and he was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his two brethren outside. And Shem and Japheth took a garment, and laid it upon both their shoulders, and went backward, and covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. How
Okay.
far do I go?
Where are you at?
That was 23.
Go to 25, please.
And Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done to him. What had his younger son? And he said, Cursed be Canaan,
Cursed be.
a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren.
Right.
So
right.
basically, Noah got drunk,
Yeah.
Ham came in and saw him naked,
Yeah.
and Noah got pissed.
Noah got pissed.
And said he was so mad that his son had seen him passed out, sloppy, naked, drunk, that he cursed his son and all of his son's descendants
Right.
to be
Right.
servants or slaves of.
And this
brother.
is actually, I believe, one of these just so stories in the sense that I think the original intent of it was to say, well, the descendants of Ham, Canaan was the child of Ham. I believe that the descendants of Ham were considered the Canaanites whose land the Israelites were going into and stealing and they were trying to subdue the Canaanites. And this story, I believe, was meant to say, oh, it's justified that these people be our slaves.
This is why we have the right.
This is why we.
Because way back when, You're not even going to believe this, but one of their ancestors saw one of our ancestors naked, and he cursed them so that they were now our slaves. And because that happened, we get to take their shit.
Yeah, and to make matters worse, this same story has been used to the Hamites in more modern times are considered the blacks, and this has been used to justify the slavery of blacks and the persecution of blacks because they are supposedly descendant from Ham. So this is just another one of these examples where there's this goofy little Bible story and it's used to justify all this terrible stuff.
And I think this is why Muslims can't eat ham.
I don't know about that.
All right, maybe I just made that up.
Yeah, I think you made that up. Let's switch to Sodom and Gomorrah.
Ooh.
Let's see.
Somehow I need you to touch on that story.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one. Let's go to chapter 19. Let's do verse 4 through 5 first. Thanks for reading. This is fun.
Sure.
This is like bedtime stories.
But before they lay down, the men of the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed around the house, both old and young, all the people from every quarter. And they called unto Lot and said unto him, Where are the men who came into thee this night? Bring them out unto us that we may know them. How many verses am I doing?
That's good enough. Okay. That's good enough. So we have the angels visiting Lot, and Lot's trying to protect the angels from the city, and he's making all sorts of deals and scheming and stuff. And the angels have come to destroy the city, and they're trying to get Lot out. And so a little bit later on, we have. Would you read 24, verse 24?
Then the Lord rained upon Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven.
Okay, so the city's destroyed, and supposedly the reason is that these aliens, these angels were so pretty that supposedly, you have to really read through the line, that all the townspeople came and they wanted to have gay sex with them. That's the
You have to be really pretty to have the whole town. I mean,
knocking at your door.
Brad Pitt could walk around some towns and not even the whole town.
Right.
So, I mean, that tells you how pretty these boys
That's
are.
right. You know, and there wasn't a big emphasis on being clean in those times. Maybe they were just washed. Maybe it was something as simple as that.
And the angels presented themselves well groomed.
Yeah, but this is a very goofy story. I recommend reading it all the way through. Later on, you can read about Lot and his daughters, which is two funny verses 32 through 36. If you want to read it now, go ahead.
Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve the seed of our father. And they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father. And he perceived not what when she lay down, nor when she arose. And it came to pass on the next day that the firstborn said unto the younger, Behold, I lay last night with my father. Let us make him drink wine again this night also, and go thou in and lie with him, 'cause he was good. Oh, I added that last one.
That's good enough. So yeah, both of his daughters go in and have sex with Lot after. This is after they supposedly think they're the only humans on the planet. And anyway, it's very, very funny. So this Sodom and Gomorrah story is used to vilify gays, and you know, if you read the whole story, it's really very goofy, and the gay angle is not 100% clear at all. And then you have this incest thing later on, which is just takes it off in some very twisted direction.
But there's a couple of curious things about it, both from what I would say is kind of a misogynistic standpoint as well, in that when they're leaving, it's Lot's wife who disobeys and turns into a pillar of salt, which strands Lot with his two daughters.
Yeah.
And then there's nothing condemning the fact that he supposedly got so blind drunk that he didn't even know his daughters were coming in and doing this.
The male anatomy doesn't really work that way. But.
Yeah, first, I have to tell you, if he was that drunk, they didn't get what they came for.
Right.
But
it's a miracle, Matt.
The story plays it up so that the daughters are to blame. That basically Lot is kind of blamed this. You know, he was the good man that was rescued, and for whatever reason
he likes his wine a little too
drunk,
much.
And his daughters took advantage of him. Now, this I don't mean to derail from what you're talking about.
That's fine.
This kind of touches on a subject that I've talked about before, which is the story in the Old Testament is both the God of the Israelites is a miserable failure, and everything that he does is a catastrophe. So he creates the whole world. He gives Adam and Eve there. That falls
They
apart. He
screw up,
has
yeah.
to banish them. He
Got Noah.
tries to continue, and the world gets worse, and so he decides to flood everybody else except for the most righteous person and his family, which is Noah. Now that most righteous person goes out and gets blind, drunk, and naked so that one of his sons sees him, and then he curses him forever. So yet another catastrophe. And now we get to Sodom and Gomorrah, where things are so evidently disastrous that he's going to destroy this town, and so he finds the most righteous person in that town to rescue. And it turns out to be a guy who gets blind, frickin' drunk so that his daughters sleep with him.
It's like a soap opera. Don't forget about the Tower of Babel.
You couldn't put this stuff on TV, not just because it's often X-rated, but because everybody go, I don't believe that shit.
That's right. This is too silly.
Let me switch back over to, help, I'm a celebrity, get me out of here.
Or yeah, Sanford and Son. It makes much more sense. Yeah. Okay, let's do the Sin of Onan. This is against horny people. Would you read 38?
Yeah, but we're
7
going to
through 10.
disagree here
We're going to disagree. Okay.
because it has nothing to
Well,
do with horny people.
I'll explain that angle in a little bit.
All right.
38, 7 through 10.
Look, the pages of my Bible are stuck together.
This is another one where God's just like, I don't like this guy, smack.
And Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him.
There you go.
Now, that's something to talk about in a minute anyway. And Judah said unto Onan, Go unto thy brother's wife, and marry her, and raise up seed to thy brother. And Onan knew that the seed should not be his. And it came to pass, when he went in unto his brother's wife, that he spilled it on the ground, lest that he should give seed to his brother. And the thing which he did displeased the Lord, wherefore he slew him also.
Yep.
So, for those of you who don't speak the King James English, this dude's brother died before having an heir. And so he was commanded by Jewish law to marry his deceased brother's wife and knock her up. And
carry on.
When it came time to do the deed, rather than actually impregnating her, he would remove himself from her in time to spill his seed upon the ground. And this, God killed him for it.
God killed him for it. And this has been used as a prohibition against masturbation and birth control both. And that's where I get to the horny people, is that this verse, these few verses of the Bible, which is another little silly vignette, has had a big impact on, the availability, I think, of birth control and the prohibitions against masturbation.
And it may be the case that you're correct, that this has been used in that way. But even a face value reading of this demonstrates that it has nothing to do with birth control or with masturbation. And
you're right. You're right.
And in antiquity, this was not presented as such. This was entirely about the importance of family and obedience to the law. God didn't kill Onan because he masturbated or because he pulled out and didn't get somebody pregnant. He killed him because he disobeyed the law that said you're supposed to do this in order to carry on the family.
Yes, I believe that's the correct interpretation of.
That's the way I've always understood it. That's the way it reads on the face, and it's something you can bring up if somebody stupidly raises this passage with regard to masturbation. But because I don't know that there's anything in this book about pleasuring oneself. Except for that you're probably lusting when you do it, and so there's
maybe
a
with your
prohibition
daughters or
against
something. Okay, let me do a little bit more, and then we'll switch over to calls if that's all right with everybody. So I wanted to also talk about another theme that shows up quite a bit in Genesis, and that is this notion of a justified thuggery, and this sort of has two sides to it. One side of it is you have this God who's just a real dick. He's just a real ogre throughout the Bible. He's killing people. He's just in that story, he was killing people. The Genesis flood is global genocide, and on and on and on. So he's just pretty awful. The other side of this thing is We want to suck up to him. We want to be associated with this God. This is our God. This is our buddy, and we're going to try to make him happy. So it's this, the kind of codependent, relationship. So very briefly here, the wrathful God, we get punishment for disobedience and original sin in Genesis 3. We get the flood story in Genesis 6. We get the Tower of Babel in Genesis 11. We get the Sodom and Gomorrah story in Genesis 18 and 19. So these go on throughout he's painted as a pretty badass kind of guy. Our association with him, we're painted as being in his image in Genesis 1. That we're allowed to have dominion over the world in Genesis 1:28. You might want to read that one night. That's okay if you don't have it handy.
It's in the beginning, so it's really easy.
Yeah.
And God blessed them. And God said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth.
Yeah, this is a pretty important quote, because the Dominionists like this quote quite a bit, because it basically says, God told us we get to go be badass too. We get to be badass on everybody, be in God's word, based on his word. In Genesis 22, we have the land deal with Abraham and his sacrifice of his son to Isaac, which is a pretty big deal. And that
Not
one
to Isaac, but
of Isaac. This one is really one of the more important stories, I think, in that it's harkens back. All of these religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are all considered Abrahamic religions, right? And they go back to the story of Abraham and this land deal. It's like a gang initiation thing. God says, "Oh well, kill this guy, and I'll give you something. I'll give you you'll be part of my gang." And the kill someone happens to be his son. Now he doesn't actually fall through with it, but Abraham is praised for being willing to do that, for fearing God over the love of his child. And I view this as sort of one of the biggest hits from the Bible that basically says, sell out your fellow man so that you can get goodies from God. Sell out your fellow man. Well, let me wrap up and just say, we have the Bible, we have Genesis, we have a lot of goofy stories in there. I recommend reading it. It's pretty interesting.
that's how far we got.
Yeah, I don't want to do all of the Bible, but
Don's
Genesis is interesting because God is the one talking most of the time in Genesis. Or there's a lot of interaction with God, and a lot of people say, this stuff is important. It's not only the first book, but it's all these various conclusions and things from God. So I let me give a top 8 or so what I think are the biggest hits from Genesis. Hit number 1 is religions and all their holy wars, all the different Abrahamic religions that draw back to Genesis, and all the different holy wars that these religions have. I'd say this is one of the biggest hits. Hit number 2 is Abraham and Isaac story that I just talked about. The fact that we have the selling out your humanity, your fellow man for favor with God. I think that's pretty awful. Hit number 3 is the original sin and all the guilt that comes with it and all the supposedly justified suffering that comes along with the original sin. Number 4 is the subservience of women and putting them down to make them the subservience by the patriarchs. Number 5, the forbidden tree of knowledge, Genesis 2, number 17, you're not supposed to have knowledge, you're supposed to be ignorant. Number 6 is perhaps the curse of Ham, vilifying blacks or justifying slavery. 7 is the impact on birth control with Onan, Matt disagrees with me, and 8 would be Sodom and Gomorrah. So let me stop for today.
Well, I think that there was a passage that you hit on right there at the beginning in Genesis that actually is probably more often used with regard to birth control.
Okay.
And that's the command to be fruitful and multiply.
Yeah.
That would probably be enough. And I think
that's
it'd be worthwhile to
repeated
point
a
out-
number of times. That's 7 or 8 times.
I think it'd be worthwhile to point out that, boy, that's not a good idea.
Right. We got a lot of people on this earth.
Yeah, I mean,
And-
I'm not saying some panic thing like we're going to run out of resources tomorrow, but the fact of the matter is that as we continue to increase the number of people on the planet, and there is a limited amount of resources, so at some point in the future, there is going to be a problem, and how this is handled may be completely beyond our control. It may be that in the battle over the resources, instead of progressing towards the civilization that we might think optimistically that we're progressing toward, that instead there's a regress and an elimination of a huge chunk of the population. I mean, if we learned anything from the history of the planet, it's that 99% of the species that have ever existed are now extinct, and there's a very strong likelihood.
And
that
we have a lot of history of inhumanity to our fellow man too.
Yeah, there's a very strong likelihood that, in spite of everything else, we will go the way of the dodo as well. Although we may be the first who have the opportunity to do something about it. In other words, the ability to get off of this rock, for example, and seek out other areas of research.
Or change course, perhaps.
Yeah. And that may involve some difficult choices, including something that China's already started doing, which is limiting the amount of people that somebody can have.
Yeah, it's a hard choice, and you definitely see this in emerging countries where they just have to get control of their population, otherwise they can't advance. And China has done that to their credit. I mean, it may or may not be the most pleasant way for them to do it, limiting
the way they've gone about it might not be great.
Yeah.
But the thing is that and generally in America and in other countries where you have freedom, people's knee-jerk reaction to something like limitations that with the specific goal of limiting population growth are no, that's my freedom and I get to have as many kids as I want. And the thing that I would optimistically hope that more and more people would begin to understand is that there's all kinds of freedoms that you can assert. There are, though, limitations on the freedoms that you can assert and still be responsible to the other citizens on the planet as well. And I'm not advocating some kind of
draconian thing.
Yeah, this is that and we're not necessarily at that point yet. I did notice something interesting though.
Yep.
And Joe, we'll take a call here in just a second. Whoever you get ready. This is I didn't bring in my other Bible. It's out in the car in my bag. This is actually the Bible that I used in high school.
It's a red letter Bible.
Took to
look at that.
Took to various church camp stuff. So I have lots of underlines and highlighting. And one of these days I'd actually like to go through this because I don't know whether I underlined or highlighted some of these passages because they specifically meant something to me or because somebody said, this is a significant passage. This is what, the preacher happened to be preaching from on a day.
So this is a way of sort of mining your past and going back and saying, why was this important to me then? And,
kind of.
And getting a different perspective on it. That would be interesting.
But one of the things, it happened to be open to Romans 16, and on the whole page there's only one brief little passage that's highlighted. And this is just to give, it hit me really quick as to the change in my perspective of things like this. Romans 16, the end of verse 19, actually it's not even the whole verse. It says, I would have you wise unto that which is good and simple concerning evil. And that's interesting. Can sound profound and kind of encouraging. I want you to know all things good. And not
be sophisticated in your evil
with regard to evil. And yet, now thinking about it, that is so absurd that it's such a simple-minded way of looking at reality that you could possibly be wise about what's good without also being wise about what's evil. That you could have an understanding of joy and beneficial actions and progress without also grasping to a nearly equal, if not necessarily equal extent, harmful actions and everything.
Well, I think it was aptly named the tree of good and evil, right? Because you have to know them both, or you have to understand them both in order to sort of appreciate.
Yeah.
So I don't mean to say that evil is a thing. We don't want to go there. But.
So, who do we have on the phones, Joe?
Winston from Sydney, Australia, from last week.
All right.
Okay.
I'll call him right now.
Call him up.
Okay.
Winston from Sydney, Australia. Did he get on last week?
No.
He was waiting last week.
Yes.
Oh.
So, Winston waited a whole week.
Yeah, his ear must be really flat from holding that phone all the whole time.
Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, how are you, Winston?
I'm good, thanks. First, I'd like to say it's an honor to be on the show. I was so excited I couldn't sleep last night.
Okay.
I didn't sleep a lot either, but
You need a life, man.
But I had fun watching DVDs, and I'd like to talk about Matt Slick from Calm, if that's all right.
sure, I guess.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I got a message from him on YouTube after I mirrored one of his videos in which he instructs Christians to deal with atheists, not by defending their own position, but to keep prodding the atheists to defend their position.
Oh,
Okay.
Yes, it's a very cowardly method of attack, I think.
so
And
basically he's advocating the same thing that he ended up trying to do during our discussion that I wouldn't let him do.
yes, I saw your 30-minute debate with Matt Slick on YouTube as well. That was very well handled by you, I think. And
Thanks.
there's a very profound difference between how he handles himself in public, like on your show, and how he handles himself privately, because he knows that he'll probably get kicked off if he insults any of you.
And yet, you know, as somebody who on occasion, I can insult people and their ideas on occasion. I know I've done it. I'm not always, proud of it. I'm far from perfect, and I'll kind of devolve into polemics on occasion as well. But if he would have had entirely the same conversation that he had with me, and also kind of littered into it, perhaps some snide or mocking comments about atheism, wouldn't have affected me at all. Because what I'm most interested in is the actual discussion, and the parts of the discussion that I thought were valuable when we were actually discussing, step by step, his version of the transcendental argument for the existence of God. It's for the same reason that I don't get offended by profanity. There are people who think that you can get your point across without, adding in a whole bunch of, words that some people find offensive. It doesn't bother me at all. I'm able to kind of filter through that for the most part to see, where's the meat at.
Well, I think the purpose of some of those things in a debate is to sort of throw some barbs at some people to see if you can get them upset, to see if you can, rile them up.
But what you're saying, Winston, is that he's actually advocating that instead of defending their faith, they simply attack atheism.
I think that's what's implied, even though he just asked Christians to ask the atheists why they hold their position, why they hold suffering to be wrong, and why they consider the God of the Bible to be an evil dick, like you said earlier in the show.
I did.
Yep. But what I find funny is that the insecurity really shines through when they run out of ideas, which tends to be pretty quickly in my experience. And they always say you just don't want to believe in him because you don't want to be accountable to your creator.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that old canard.
Yeah, you're not really an atheist, you just want to sin.
Yeah. And I sent him a final message saying that a perfect God would not need to create anything because he would be insusceptible to greed. So either the Christian God is imperfect because he apparently created the world just to get worship from a bunch of sycophants, or he doesn't exist because if he did exist, then the universe would not exist.
Yeah, that's and for the people who
Makes sense to me.
didn't quite latch onto that, that's a question that's come up a number of times. The big question that philosophy deals with and that a religion various religions make an attempt to answer in some form or another is, why is there something instead of nothing? And religions, in particular Christianity, think that they've answered this, and the answer is because that's what God wanted. And yet their particular model of God as this perfect being, when viewed, as Winston's talking about, it in the sense of completeness. Clearly, if the God needed to or wanted to actually create the universe, then he was lacking something.
Well, hold on a second here, because we're talking about creating something from nothing, and we're already assuming that there's a God there, which is.
Well, yeah, we're assuming.
Are we admitting that God is nothing, or right? So there's a special pleading going on too, right?
Yeah,
which always annoys me.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I say goes, basically. And he also has another common argument that atheism doesn't count for morality, which is like saying that chemistry doesn't account for physics. They're totally different, separate fields of study.
Yeah.
And
He's right.
I believe that
He's right.
Yeah,
Atheism doesn't account for morality. He's absolutely correct. It doesn't. I'll say it every day. Atheism in no way accounts for morality.
Fair enough. I
But
think I
we're not
have
making- yeah.
an objective method of determining the best moral action given our limited knowledge and the circumstances. Basically, I treat suffering as objective to the person experiencing it. So, for example, if you stub your toe, you might rate it as a 1 on a pain scale. Someone else might rate it as a 2 or 0.5 and so on, up to terminal cancer and so on, I guess. And anything that increases happiness and reduces suffering without compromising the happiness or increasing the suffering of anyone else is a moral action in that situation.
Yeah, I think it's that simple.
I think that what does work probably generally is a good rule of thumb. The thing is, though, that we had a similar discussion kind of last week and the week before with a caller from the UK trying to give a simplified rule for morality, and in every one of those rules,
You can find exceptions.
You can find
right?
an exception. You can find a situation where, for example, given the particular rule that you're talking about, which I think is just as good as any other, as a general rule of thumb, it may be the case that in order to, for example, increase the happiness, maximize the happiness, and decrease the aggregate suffering, that it may be necessary to eliminate somebody. For example, I mean, I'm not saying that this is necessarily
this
the case
is a
all the
problem
time,
with the
but
accounting, right?
Yeah.
This is like, how do you account for this, this and that? So
if I kill one person and who was torturing 100, have I done the moral act? And also in the case of for example, self-defense, if I'm witnessing somebody who is torturing somebody, and for whatever contrived reason, the only way to stop that suffering is to kill the person who's inflicting the suffering, clearly I've decreased that person's happiness. But I'm not the slightest bit concerned about theirs because of they're already engaged in an act that is immoral. But they're all that's a contrived scenario. So
yeah, I understand. That reminds me of something that Matt Slick said. He said that suffering is not a good bar to base morality on, because if you can enslave a minority to make the majority happy and to make the whole of society better off, then it would be moral to legalize slavery. But that ignores everything that happens in history. He ignores the underground tunnels that people built because of their guilt to help slaves escape, and they forgot about the Civil War and about the productivity of the slaves and the slave suicides.
yeah, and not only that, but I find it curious that Slick picks that particular example when he's somebody who buys into a religion that doesn't just advocate slavery, it specifically endorses it, right down to
He ignores the verses that tell you how to treat foreign slaves, and he focuses on the verses that tell you that you have to free a fellow Jew after 7 years or whatever it is.
Yeah, that particular dishonest argument is one that I encounter so often it's not even funny. I'm reluctant to say that people are lying. Like, for example, Matt Slick, Ray Comfort, whatever. I'm reluctant to say that they are lying. But when I've had conversations with them, and we talk about issues like those, and they make the particular claim, like what you're talking about, where they reference one thing and not the other, and someone corrects them, be it me or whoever they're having a discussion with, from that point on, they cannot claim to not be aware of this. So then they must be making a choice to cite passage A and ignore passage B. And they're making that choice for the purpose of conveying a particular view about the message in total. And I think that is a deceptive view, and in that context, I think they're lying. I think there's no other nice way to say it. They're just lying.
Or they play this game of ignoring a particular response.
Yeah.
And it's almost like they're playing to a theater, right? And they're doing the same play over and over again, and not learning anything that happened during the last play. And
Yeah.
yeah, it makes you wonder. You know, are they just stupid, or are they acting, or are they, you know, what's the deal? Are they just lying, as you say?
Yeah. That kind of picking and choosing for dishonest arguments, I think they got to be lying. And it's much the same way that, you know, like I'm reluctant to say it about, for example, Ray Comfort
all the time.
on evolution. It may be the case that he's not lying. It may be the case that Ray is so monumentally deluded and moronic
You have to
that
wonder.
he's just incapable of processing the information that people give him. And it's so funny to watch because, yes, people laughed about, for example, the crocoduck. And then when they point to Tiktaalik, a true transitional form, he says, oh, wait a minute, it's a fish and a crocodile. So they have a crocofish, yet they laughed at my crocoduck. Well, in some simplistic sense, I suppose you could look at Tiktaalik as a crocofish. That's the type of thing that you would do if you were looking at transitional forms in that context. But it demonstrates that he still doesn't understand the absurdity of a crocoduck, where there's no reason to
so
think
is he
that those
playing
two
to
are
a stupid
connected.
audience, or is he really
Yeah.
stupid? Yeah.
He's trying to say, oh, look, the evolutionists laughed at me for the crocoduck, yet they've got a crocofish. And, you know,
Yeah, it's sad.
it's absurd. But I appreciate the call. Thanks a lot for calling in, or letting us call
That's
you.
all right. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
Okay,
Thanks.
Mr. Joe, cue
Next.
up another one.
Plenty to choose from. Colin from Stockholm, and religion in the U.S. versus the EU.
Okay. Okay.
So we're
What-
calling Colin in Stockholm.
Is that right? Okay.
Yep.
Cool. You're on?
Hello.
Hello, Colin. How are you?
Hi. I'm great. I'm a great fan of the show. First time calling though.
Well, we're glad to have you.
Well, welcome.
Yeah. Born and bred in Sweden. As you guys know, it's the least religious country here in the world.
We hear it's among the happiest countries too, and
Yeah,
and
that too.
most peaceful and all these things.
socialized, communist.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's actually the most sane country in the world, if that wouldn't be a better way to phrase it. But
No, actually, I don't think so. And that was what I was wanting to discuss.
okay.
Because we have, I mean, most European countries have state-sponsored official Christian churches, and they live off taxpayer money, basically. That sounds bad enough, but it kind of gets boring for people. I mean, the priests are not proselytizing because they're getting a paycheck from the government, basically, so they don't have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, from our standpoint, it's like the grass is greener. It's like that might be a good thing.
It's been
A
argued
toothless
before.
state religion it might be a good thing.
It's been
At least
argued
in
before.
Sweden, the church has been almost completely reduced to performing weddings, various hosting choirs,
Yeah.
school plays, and stuff like that.
I've had discussions with people before where they've argued that perhaps the best way to eliminate religion and the harms of religion is to establish a state religion, because that eliminates, first of all, competition, or drastically reduces the viability of competition, and also, as you pointed out, proselytizing, because they're already getting a paycheck. My big objection to this is that while that might work
In the long run.
in the long run,
Right.
it's
Well, I'm not
In the
saying
short run,
it's
it's not too pleasant usually.
yeah, it's not what I
to
would
do now, but I mean, historically, that has worked in favor of the Europeans
Yeah.
when it comes to
Is Sweden a country where you can opt out and not pay the religious tax? I've heard of some of
you
the.
can actually leave, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes some. It's not easy, but you can do it. Yeah, it is possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've heard of
But-
that in other areas as well.
Yeah, there is this statistic out saying that 80% of Swedes are non-religious or atheist. But if you actually ask them, they haven't really thought about it. So they're mostly like, you know, well, they've never thought about it
Yeah.
there's some kind of
One of our members here has a term for that. He calls them agnostics. Because they ignore religion.
Or agnostic fence-sitters, basically. They've just never been challenged to think about it.
Yeah.
So they don't really care.
Well, that's probably a good thing, perhaps. As long as it's not replaced by something else that's,
like New Age stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that a problem?
Well, it's not a big problem, but there is some of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is Sweden pretty big into the homeopathy in the way that some of the other European countries are?
Oh no. The UK is by far the worst in that area. Yeah. I think so, at least.
Yeah.
I mean, even the royal family.
Well, God hates Sweden.
Yeah, I know.
Why is that?
I heard that from Fred Phelps. That's one of his websites. In addition to God hates fags, there's God hates Sweden.
Well, God hates America, according to
Because
Fred Phelps, too.
doesn't the royal family
The
have
story
like
behind that
a
was
lesbian?
there was some radical Swedish preacher preaching against gays, and he was very shunned by the official church in Sweden. Very shunned.
Well, I mean, I think one of the reasons that Phelps went that way isn't somebody in like, there's a royal family in Sweden or something that some of the members were gay.
No, I don't think I've heard anything about that.
Oh,
Maybe we're
Mostly
misremembering.
to do with
Joe,
that
pull up
priest.
God hates Sweden.
Yeah, I know.
He's gonna
But I
screw up
actually
the
kind of
internet
like
connection.
the West. What are they called again? I can't remember the name. But anyway, it's just nice to see how upset a real quote unquote Christians get. They get really upset. Like,
Well, one of the things I hear about the Christians here complaining about Europe is that your birth rates have gone way down, and they're just like, "Oh no, the sky is falling. We're going to be no population whatsoever if we let those atheists get in charge."
well, it's not the atheists that are taking the reins. It's the Muslims, really.
Okay, hold on a sec.
That's why God hates them.
Okay, we just got the word. Go ahead.
Although I didn't quite get it.
It's not the royal family. It's the fact Sweden allowed homosexuality. They did not outlaw it in 1944.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so evidently they didn't outlaw it
Yeah.
in '44, so
Yeah,
God hates them.
same-sex marriages and all that. So.
Well, at least
Well,
Uh,
funny story.
Fred Phelps God hates them.
At the same time that they legalized that, they also legalized bestiality. I don't know why.
Okay.
Really?
They did, as long as
Did the
no
cows
one
get a vote?
no one can prove they actually did any harm to the animal, and it's legal.
Okay.
You guys
know,
are
I'm
far
just
more
saying.
progressive than I'm comfortable with.
We're not quite there yet.
Actually, I'm hoping the yet is unnecessary because granted, I'm happy to slaughter and eat animals because I enjoy it and they're tasty. But I do still object. Call it irrational, call it a conflict of interest, but I do object to sex with an animal when you cannot get consent.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I would
let's
too,
change the
actually.
subject here.
Yeah, we've kind of gone overboard there.
Yeah,
Where'd my parrot go?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really have anything else on my mind.
All right.
All
Thanks
right.
a lot.
Thank you for
Take a look.
calling.
Yeah, thanks.
Nice hearing from you.
Yeah, bye.
Bye-bye.
Next.
Jane from Ontario, anti-evolutionists.
Jane or James?
James.
James from Ontario. We are calling you now. Put your headphones back on if you got them. Ignore the stream. How you like my comfy love seat?
It's good. It's good.
We had to put extra cushions in the seat. Otherwise, we'd sit about 4 inches
You need a
lower
piece
than
of plywood or something. Yeah.
Don's really tall, but we're on par almost.
Yeah. You and Martin were like sinking down into it. It's like
Yeah. Martin and I like getting
your
cozy.
legs up and.
So,
Okay.
Hello?
Hello.
is this James?
Yes, it is.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Not bad.
I'm a 16-year-old atheist from Ontario, Canada.
Uh-huh.
And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the state of affairs in Canada in regards to religion because there's actually been a bit of a upsurge, and I know the common stereotype is that we're more or less religious here in Canada, but in recent years, most denominations of Christianity have been on the decline, except for evangelical fundamentalist Christianity, which is on the rise in an alarming rate. Just for an example, in Alberta, which is basically the western provinces, there are Bible Belt. They've been trying to pass bills that allow parents to exclude their children from sex education and evolution in biology class, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they seem to be taking kind of the worst ideas from here and grafting them there.
Yes, absolutely. Well, currently we have a conservative minority government. We have a weird political system, but anyway, that's how it's going. And I also wanted to share my recent endeavors. The first week of August, I'm going to be going to a summer camp that I've gone to every year of my life. I used to be a fundamentalist myself, and it's pretty similar, now that I think about it, to the Jesus camp from the movie.
Oh boy!
Yeah.
So you're going to go in there and be the token atheist? Is that your goal, or
basically,
you're
I'm
going to out yourself?
Bringing camera equipment and such to see if I could, I don't know, maybe get a little bit of a documentary out of the thing, see how my experience goes.
Huh.
Well, that'd be cool. I think if you tell people you're an atheist, they're not going to trust you, and they're not going to give you free reign.
Yeah, that's the issue. Since I've actually gone there every single summer for my entire life. We own property on the camp. Oh yeah, I didn't mention that. Most of my family's fundamentalist, and I'm still in the closet.
Oh boy.
Oh, so
Yeah.
you're stealthing your way back into camp to get some documentary footage.
Well,
Yes.
that sounds like a good project if you can kind of keep it on the down low.
Yeah, if I was like extremely wealthy and you managed to get good footage, I'd actually buy some of that footage for the show, because I thought Jesus Camp was an exceptionally well done documentary, probably one of the best documentaries, if not the best documentary on religion I've seen ever, because it was, it honestly represented what was going on. It was not the most extreme of the religious organizations. I mean, it was just enough to shock some people about what was going on, but it certainly wasn't anywhere near the most extreme. So,
Yes. This camp is a little bit. I guess it's not as into politics. Like, we don't pray to cardboard cutouts of our prime minister, but it is.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy there, and
if he wasn't just a prime minister, I mean, if you guys actually had a real frickin' president, maybe they would.
yeah, maybe. Well, they do have services for children as young as the kids who were in Jesus Camp, and I've seen the same sort of things there that are here. So it's going to be quite difficult because I have a fervently religious mother. Basically, is the mother's side of the family in this issue, and I'm basically having to assess my situation, and I realize I probably have to wait till I get to university, where I have a good 2-hour drive between us, to let her know that I'm an atheist, so I can just hang up the phone when I hear the screaming start.
Yeah, and I can let you know that 2-hour drives don't seem to make a difference for some people.
Yeah.
That may be the case.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking about calling in much earlier, but I didn't want to do the long distance charges. But I was going to ask about coming out to my fundamentalist parts of the family, but I know it's been asked a lot of times, and the question's kind of been done to death. And I think that in my case, I guess I'll just have to wait, with them being very, very fundamentalist.
Well, you're coming from a place that's kind of unusual. I don't think we've gotten very many calls from young people that are sort of don't feel kind of like a victim, right? Maybe you feel. It sounds like you feel kind of empowered to do something with your situation, which I think is a good thing, right? It's a good thing that you've.
I was just as fundamentalist as they were only about 2 years ago, and never considered critically examining my beliefs till I was about 14 or 15 years old, and at that time I basically I started watching YouTube videos about atheism because I wanted to be able to argue with the atheists and convert them to Christianity, and look at where that got me.
Boy, that sounds familiar. Hey, I'll tell
That
you,
just warms my heart. I just
I'll
love to
tell you
hear
this,
it.
I'll tell you this, James. Not only have we dealt with the question a lot, but it's also one that I've dealt with a lot in email. And I won't actually give you any actual advice for two reasons. One is that every situation is different, and you know your family far better than I do. And the other one being that you're a minor, and I'm always reluctant to get involved because under a lot of laws, you're pretty much property until you're 18.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, I don't want to get myself in trouble, but I will say that just from talking to you in this short time, I'm not too worried about you. You know, you know your family. You'll do what you think is right when you think it's right. And, you know, I wouldn't be overly concerned about it. The one bit of advice that I happily give everybody in that situation is that, you know, that if it's right for you to come out, and it may not be for everybody, and it may not be at all times, you know, feel free to do it. There's no problem with being honest with who you are, and honest to other people about who you are. But if there is the reality, which is true for some people, maybe not for you, that coming out would seriously negatively affect your life, would affect, for example, your job or your job prospects or your family or your health, or in some cases
That's the way it is
your
right
life.
now, actually. Just because I live in my parents' house, I don't think I can really do this sort of thing until I'm living on my own.
Yeah.
But I certainly think that by that time I will be able to. And
Well, you can always blame the university, you know.
yeah, well,
It's that
yes,
education.
Actually, my even more fundamentalist grandmother called me today and basically she had a conversation with me, telling me how concerned she was that there's an alarming rate here in Canada of children going to college and university, and like 90% of them after university stop going to church. And I said, "Oh, that's horrible."
I can't wait.
And you said it was horrible because you're hoping it was 95, 96 or something?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
So I guess that's it for me. I don't want to take up any more time. I'll call in maybe in a few weeks after I've gone to the camp, and let you guys know how it went, and if I got any interesting footage.
Or maybe you'll find Jesus.
Or maybe I'll find Jesus.
He's behind the couch the whole
Tell
time.
you why
Yeah.
you're all wrong.
Okay.
All right, thanks a
Thank you
lot.
guys very
Thanks.
much.
I actually have a little Jesus.
Okay. All right. You found him. I have a little bit of advice to people who, not necessarily this caller, but to people who are dealing with coming out to their parents, and that would be emphasize the commonality that you have with your family, and you know, this being an atheist may be the newest, most interesting thing in your life, but you still have a huge amount in common with your family, common values, and those sorts of things.
It's quite a sensitive situation, actually.
Yeah.
It's me and my father who are a bit in the closet, and he's...
Oh, your
I'm
father
afraid-
too?
Yeah, I'm afraid of him. Yeah, sorry. I'm afraid of him outing me because he cannot handle going to church every Sunday and coming home, and he basically just flies off the handle.
Safety in
and
numbers.
swears at me.
Good for you, man.
You're in the best possible position because you already know that there is somebody on your side, and it happens to be a parent. So
Yeah, I'm just afraid he just goes nuts one day because he keeps telling me that he has a very, very strong, uncontrollable urge to just stand up in the middle of the service and tell them how much of a load of BS it is and walk out. But he can't help it.
I want to meet your dad.
Yeah, well, I go to a Pentecostal church. I don't know if you guys know. You know, we're the crazy ones.
Yeah, you
those type
speak
of
in
people.
tongues and dance around and stuff.
Yeah, oh yes, and we've had recently, for example, pastors from Ethiopia come in talking about miracles such as little girls being resurrected from the dead and converting entire villages of Muslims to Christians. And people, one magical explanation was a family had nothing but a bowl of macaroni to eat for the rest of the week, and a Christian lady knocked on the door and sat down to eat with them. And the custom is that you share your food with whoever comes in the door. And God magically multiplied their macaroni so that they could all eat it and be full and still have some left over. And the congregation just ate it up, so to speak.
Oh boy!
Wow.
Oh boy!
So
It would be hard to sit still through that.
I don't remember macaroni and cheese being on the approved diet list in the
It
Bible.
may not have, no cheese.
But,
No cheese.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely get back to us after you're done at camp. Thanks a
Yeah.
lot for calling in, James.
Thank you very much, guys.
Sure.
Thank you.
So we got like 25 minutes left. As a quick reminder before we take the next call, when we're done here, we're going to go to dinner at Plucker's up by the Lake Creek Mall. I don't want to have to give too many directions, but the way I go is I go up North 183 on the access road, take a left on Pecan Park. That takes you around, you cross over 620, and Plucker's is right there just past the Chili's. Somebody actually knows where that is, just from me saying that. We're off the air at 6:01 because we started a minute late, which is about 18 minutes away or so, 17 minutes away.
We'll take one or two calls, maybe, huh?
So yeah, we can get some more calls in. Who's next?
So George from New York wants to talk to Don.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
George is talking to Don. I'm out of here.
George is calling to correct me. I just know it.
Yeah.
Or he's got some
I'm
very
gonna set my
interesting
mic
little
down.
tip. Oh,
George, you have Don.
George, are you there?
Calling.
Calling. He's calling George. Okay. It's a little awkward pause here. Okay, George.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, Don. Hello, Matt again.
Yeah, Matt just wandered off.
Oh, well. Hey, the mics sound okay, so
Good.
don't worry too much about that.
Good. What do you got for us?
Well, I was just thinking when you were talking about the greatest hits and or misses in Genesis, it's worth remembering the figure of Marcion. People can go look him up. That's Marcion. He was an important figure in early church history because he looked at what he had available to him in terms of the Gospels and what he had known culturally about the Old Testament, and he decided that these were two separate gods. That the God, the Father that Jesus prayed to and spoke of and would some would argue equated himself with, was an entirely different being than the Jehovah of the Old Testament. And
How
so
interesting.
he dispensed with it entirely and launched one of the great early heretical movements against what would eventually gel into Orthodox Christianity.
Right.
So
he had a version of the scripture, right, that he was trying to advance.
I think he had one or two Gospels and a handful of letters, and he jettisoned the entire Hebrew scripture. He just said, this is a different religion. This is not us.
That's interesting.
He ordained, he was a very intelligent, educated man. He had a huge following. He ordained bishops and founded churches. And one of the earliest knockdown fights in recorded church history, I mean, all his stuff was burned and destroyed, and he was anathematized, and the other side obviously won. But the reason we know so much about him is that the people opposing him, in order to refute him and shout him down, recorded his beliefs in considerable detail. And we have the records of these denunciations, similar to Eusebius in the Contra the Heresies, where we know what these other early deviants thought because we have the denouncements and the shout downs recorded on the victor's side.
Very interesting. Yeah,
So
I've heard bits and pieces
this is
about.
not a new problem. This is old stuff.
And it makes some amount of sense because the Christianity is got such a different flavor and it's such a bag on the side of Judaism. The New Testament there is just such a different animal.
It is. It's such an abrupt tonal shift, and basically in the Old Testament, God behaves like Zeus or Marduk or some other pagan god. It's not very cosmic at all. He gets into wrestling matches. He has all these emotional attributes. He floods
kind of
the
a
world
spoiled-
and says, "Oops."
Yeah.
It's not terribly transcendent.
Yeah.
Also, last week, Matt was touching on the issue, as is often touched, about atheists versus, is our problem with extremism, or is it with the teachings of the religions and their scriptures and whatnot? My 2 cents on this, and we've raised this before, is, I might have said this to Matt once. A friend of mine said to me, you know, I think your problem is not so much with me being a Christian, but with some of us who are far out Christians. He said these words. He said, I'm not throwing people onto a fire after all.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that's true, and I'm glad to hear it. But you and your kind are keeping the fire burning, aren't you?
Yeah.
You know, you're not violently antisocial, and I appreciate that as a member of a minority belief system. I certainly do. But you're not either going to walk away from it. And I have the feeling that if you had the opportunity to reassert your cultural privileges, you would do so, and you would silence me. I think in your heart of hearts, you really don't want me standing next to you as an equal in the public square, as an outspoken atheist, you know, telling people that I think this is all nonsense.
Because they would have to think, if they're sincere, they would have to think that the very idea that they are wrong is not something that should be publicly spoken, because it may convince people and lead them to their damnation.
Right. I mean, you honestly, if you believe, like you've often said, Matt, if you people truly, truly, truly believe what you're saying and what's in your scriptures, you cannot be okay with me being an atheist. You cannot accept that with equanimity.
Right, right.
It's one or the other. Either you don't really mean what you're saying, or there's something you're not telling me.
Oh, did we lose George?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. I heard a pop like we lost you.
I agree, and you can find lots of situations like that where you know the line they're taking doesn't make sense, right? Because it's at odds with a particular scripture, or it's at odds with a claimed belief. You know, I see this a lot where the behavior of believers is completely at odds with what they claim to believe, right? And so the behavior tells you what the true beliefs are, right? Because you're going to act based in your own self-interest, and you're going to act based on your own beliefs, whatever they may be, and those are often very different than what they go to church and claim their beliefs are.
Well, as has often been said on TAE, most Christians really have no idea what's in their own scriptures, and certainly don't know much about the history of how this came about. And in a sense, it doesn't matter, because they've cobbled together their own sort of contemporary Christianity, which was, whether or not they admit it, has been greatly influenced by American culture and influences from Europe and other things, and from England. And, you know, as much as they like to say that they're this, you know, that they oppose the modern secular world, they really don't. For better or worse.
I think it would also be fair, and I know that some people are going to find this particularly insulting, because you know, the people who probably find this insulting are the exceptions. But I think if you polled most Christians, for example, most people who claim to be Christians, at least in the United States, most of them don't really have any idea what it is that they actually believe. They have this kind of nebulous hodgepodge cobbled together bits and pieces. Don't let him get up there. And they're not, I don't think they completely know. And that's how, when you do these polls, you get these answers that seem to be conflicting.
Oh, these polls are frustrating, because it's like the questioners don't even have a clue of what they're asking, or the nuances.
Throw him back.
And they're asking these stupid, vague questions.
Come here. This is Max. I brought Max out, George. He's being pretty good.
Oh, Max the bird.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's pretty beautiful.
And he's been quiet and fairly well behaved, so he gets to stay out for a little bit. But
well, it's a good refutation, because unlike apologist arguments, Max can actually fly.
Yes. But he's just as good at parroting what other people say.
There we go.
Buddy.
Okay. Bad joke.
You know, I've actually stopped playing Bible bingo with people, where you pick up the thing and you say, well, did you know it says this? And they go, oh, goodness. And did you know it says that? Where you bring up the slavery, because it's almost too easy unless you have that rare person who's actually, conversant with it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh, and last thing, regarding
so George, before you go on, why have you given up? Because they just don't respond to it, or
if you've ever gotten in a conversation, I had this happen last night. I was talking about Egyptology with someone, and it turned out this guy actually we were playing Left 4 Dead on Steam, and we start talking about ancient Egypt because that's how confused I am, and it turns out that this fellow has a master's degree in classical history and is an Egyptology nut. So what began as just a conversation turns into a lecture because he knows, he's forgotten more than I'll ever know. And that can be very grating, even if you appreciate the information, because it turns into a lecture. And I don't say this to glorify myself, but I've done a little reading and I know certain things. And when I encounter someone who's never thought critically about their religion and its teachings and its history and the sociology of it and all of that, I find myself switching into "and did you know" mode, which turns me into an asshole. Even though I don't mean to be, I can't help it because I want to catch them up. So at least when I mention, say, Bultmann or another, another famous Bible scholar, I mention something Bob Price or Bart Ehrman says, at least we can both talk about the same thing in the same way on the same level. But if they've never heard of any of this, then it'd be a little bit like me arguing biology with P.Z. Myers. It's going to be P.Z. talking to me as a biology professor talks to some schmuck who barely knows what, how cell mitosis works. And so I just stopped doing it. And now I've stolen your tactic of saying, well, what do you believe and why?
Well, you can pay me royalties. And I have no idea if we're actually going to end up putting these shows on ACTV or not. Yeah. But it's a good time. Oh, we are? Okay. then I'm going to say something else before you get to your last point, and then we'll move on to somebody else.
Okay.
I got an email the other day about you.
Oh, good Lord.
Yes.
And it didn't have .gov at the end, did it?
No. It was somebody suggesting they like listening to George on the show so much that we should pay George to be regular. And I didn't get around to answering them because I haven't answered any email this week. And the answer is, why the hell should I pay George when we're not getting paid?
That's right.
Exactly.
George
hey,
can do his own damn show.
Treasure in heaven.
No, we love your calls, George.
Otherwise, I'd hang up on you all the time. Hey, I might catch you later on this week in our game. I think I might actually get some time.
The game which will not be mentioned because we beat it to death on these calls.
Okay. Okay.
He likes Joe.
One last part. Oh, is Max acting up again?
He just likes Joe.
No, we got another bird guy here.
After he pooped on the floor, he decided he was going to fly to Joe. So I'm going to
missed my foot, thankfully.
Yeah. One final thing about families and atheism. 2 weeks ago, I was at a brunch with an extended family, and one of my cousin's kids, who's 10 years old, asked me why I hadn't been with him at church earlier, and I said, well, I don't go to church. I'm an atheist. And he asked me what that was, and I told him. So the kid later on, he adjourns, he went to get some more food or do something. And my cousin turns to me, and she says, I really don't appreciate that. When he comes back, just drop the subject, et cetera, et cetera. My answer was, I respect the fact that you're his parents, and I'm not going to interfere because I think parents have the right to raise their kids, within reason. But I'm not going to be dragooned into a complicity of silence.
Well, good for you.
If the kid asks me questions, he's going to get answers. He doesn't have to answer the question, but if he's old enough to, he's old enough to hear what I have to say, and then he can ask you, and then you can tell him, and he can get back to me, or we can have a round table, or who knows what. But no, sorry, even in the bonds of family, I'm not going to shut up. Yeah. That's not reasonable.
But you're coming from a different place because you're an adult, and you can kind of say, well, this is my limits, my boundaries, this is what I'm going to do, I'm an adult, I can make these decisions, but we have a lot of people who are kids who are in their teens, and they don't have that luxury, unfortunately.
Well, one of the things I said to the kid was, when we talk about this, you have to understand that I'm older than you, and I've read books, and I've had conversations about this. So if I challenge something you think or something your folks have told you, don't take my word for it.
Right.
I might just be talking circles around you because I've got some years on you. So don't let that get you upset. Take what I say, think about it, roll it around in your head, ask your folks, ask the minister. We're not afraid of the subject. If you want to talk, if you never want to talk anything, we can talk about.
It's very devious, George. Whatever. Very devious. I love it.
So
My take's been very similar with regard to my niece and nephew. The subject hasn't come up. I don't know when it'll come up or if it'll come up.
But your family's probably polluted your niece and nephew into thinking that you're the Antichrist or something.
No, nothing at all. Not even remotely like that.
No?
Uncle Matt is the bomb.
The bomb, okay.
Come here.
all right, well, guys, thanks for taking the call, and good luck with whatever happens with the studio.
All right, thanks,
Thanks.
Max. All right, thanks,
Ciao.
Max. Thanks, George.
Max.
And thanks,
Yeah.
Max.
Yeah, Max is up ahead of us too.
What I've said is that I have no reason to not answer honestly, but I also respect them and what they want to do with regard to teaching their kids. And so, depending on how it comes up, I'm not completely sure how I'll answer, but I will always answer honestly. And if the honest answer landed right on Joe's head.
Okay,
if
we're
the-
getting some acrobatics going on
If
in
the
here.
honest answer is this is something you probably want to talk to your parents about, or that your parents would rather you didn't talk to me about, then that's the honest answer.
Yeah.
You want a peanut? Here, take a piece.
Well, I admire George for saying don't trust me. Think for yourself. That's
Yeah.
good stuff. That's way to go, man. Okay, Mr. Joe, can you?
So Joe's got to get us another caller.
One more
and
caller.
Max is harassing Joe.
That's right. So we got a little conflict of
John from Lake
Conflict
Forest,
of peanut.
Illinois.
John from Lake Forest. We're calling you now.
We're getting down to the end here too.
Yep. We got.
One or two more calls.
Yeah. This may be the last call.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello?
Hey, John.
Oh, hang on.
Hi.
I'm sorry. I have to go discipline a bird.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Matt is dealing with his bird, and I'm here.
Okay, I wanted to talk about the reasons why I think people believe in God. And I believe in God myself, but I think that oftentimes you'll hear atheists say that people believe because they want something out of religion, whether they want to go somewhere after they die or whether they, something like that. But I think if you look at virtually every culture since people have lived in civilizations, you'll find that people have believed in various gods or various religions, and I think there's something more going on than wanting something out of it. I think it's that they're recognizing something within themselves. Otherwise, why would this be so prevalent in virtually every society?
Well, there's been various claims that humans are hardwired for religion, that we're hardwired for seeing connections with things that are maybe not there, or there's perhaps a human need to feel part of something bigger and embrace the transcendent. So there may be more reasons than just getting something out of it. Just the base transaction.
I'm curious what you mean, because on the one hand you seem to be dismissing the same thing that you're asserting.
No, what I'm saying is that I think that it's people believe it because there's truth to it that's inside of us. That it's not just because people want something out of it. I'm sure some people believe it because of that, but I also think that I think religion is obviously man-made, the various religions, but I think the ultimate thing that represents is within all of us. And I think
I think it's within all of us too. I'm just curious as to what you mean by that, because when I say it's within all of us, I'm saying that this is just a part of our nature. That you seem to be claiming that you're convinced that people have believed and continue to believe by and large in most civilizations because there's some truth to it. And I'm wondering what you mean by truth. What aspect of this do you think there's truth to?
That there is a God that is the creator of the universe, and that there is more to the universe than is observable by science.
Okay, well, I already agree that there's, depending on what you mean by more to the universe than is observable by science, but going to the God creator thing, you believe that there is a God who created the universe. And this is the element that you think is true. Why do you think it's true?
I think it's true because I look at people and I think that, you know, one of the things I like to say in arguments is that if you look at just like rudimentary material, you know, that doesn't have any consciousness. But if I look at people and I experience people, I can tell that there's something inside of people that is more than just stuff, matter.
Okay, so you look at consciousness, and because you don't see it in anything other than human beings, although I'd say that to some degree you're going to see it in other living things as well, but this particular self-awareness, this particular kinship that you have, okay, there's something there that you don't have an explanation for, and then you say that you have an explanation for it. That explanation must be God. Why does that need to be, why is that a plausible explanation for consciousness?
Well, because also another reason I have is that, you know, the universe in and of itself, I don't believe that something can come from nothing.
Yet you think that's what God did?
I think it depends what you call God, but I think that there has to be an author and a creator, just like there has to be a creator for everything.
Were you created?
I mean, directly, I come from my parents, but if you want to trace it back far enough, then I would say yes.
Okay, but do you not, I apologize in advance, but do you not realize that this is just a big argument from ignorance? That I can't think of any other way that this could have happened, so it must have been a God. That has to be, I'm sorry, and it's not just you, this is most common, that has to be one of the most arrogant things I've ever heard. That you have surveyed the landscape, and because you can come up with no better answer than there must be this magic transcendent being who did all this, that therefore it is true.
Well, no, I'm not applying any attributes to it. I'm not saying it's a specific.
You are applying
I'm just
attributes
saying,
to it.
I don't see. I'm just saying that there has to be a for all these things that exist in the world. There has to be a creator. That I don't see that as an outlandish claim.
There has to be an explanation for everything. But when you say creator, and when you start talking about God, you are assigning attributes. You are asserting an explanation. And with that explanation comes specific characteristics. I mean, I don't know what your particular view of what God is.
I would say you could. I mean, I consider my own personal spirituality, but I would say you could classify it as most like a deist type of view.
Okay, so you're going a more deistic route where there was some kind of first cause God who doesn't intervene in daily events.
Right, but because he doesn't intervene doesn't mean that he doesn't care or that there isn't a purpose to things.
You're right, but it also doesn't mean that there is, and it doesn't mean that it does exist. You're
but
basically.
I don't understand how. So, in your point of view, there's really no objective truth to anything.
I'm sorry, just hang on the line because we only have 30 seconds till we have to close out the show, and I'll talk to you on Skype for a second more after the show, or you can call back next week. Either way, thanks to everybody who tuned in over the internet. And Skype, thanks Don for coming in and making your way to the studio. Thanks Max for flying around the room for us.
And entertaining us.
We'll see some of you at Pluckers at Lake Creek Mall and the rest of you next week. Take care. Okay, so we're off the air if you're still there.
We lose him?
We got some feedback. Are you still there?
Here. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay.
What else? Yeah.
Actually, I don't know what happened. We lost the volume. No, on the FX one, the little red knob. No, red to your right. To your right. Up, down.
Okay.
The bottom one, I think, is the volume for him on those speakers. So, okay. You're taking a more deistic approach, which is that there must be some thing that caused all of this, and you're going to call it God without giving it any attributes.
Yeah, well, I'm giving the attributes. All I'm saying is that I think that I would give it the attributes that God cares what we do, and if we lead moral lives, I would give it that attribute. I'm just not. Why? Because I think if there's something that created something that is cares about that it cares the way it lives its life.
That's a big leap. That's a huge leap.
I don't see how that's a huge leap at all. I mean, why? It's like,
Wow.
why would you?
First of all, you've made the leap that there is something that creates.
Well, I can explain to you why I believe that.
And then you say that anything that would create necessarily cares about its creation. That's not a deistic view of God at all. The deistic view of God is a non-interfering God who is completely indifferent. That basically the first cause, first mover thing that got.
No, I wouldn't say that it's completely indifferent. I mean, I don't think that's.
I'm telling you what the standard deistic position is. Now you've got your own version that of a deistic, a theistic God who's kind of deistic but also cares about what goes on. And I'm saying that you can't make any argument to get from A to B, to get from there is a God to it cares necessarily, and you haven't even established the A part, the there is a God.
Well, what I've tried to do is explain that I believe that something doesn't come from nothing. That there's a grander purpose and a meaning to life.
All right.
Not just. I think that's my personal.
No.
belief.
You just made two completely different statements. One is that something doesn't come from nothing, and the other statement is that there's some grander purpose or meaning to life. Now, I have no position on whether or not something can or can't come from nothing. I don't particularly find that relevant, because even if it's impossible for something to come from nothing, that tells you nothing at all about what happened or what caused it. You don't know anything about it, whether it was a being, an intelligence, a natural law. You can't even speculate about things that happened before the Big Bang.
Right. Or whether there was nothing before the Big Bang. That's a huge assumption.
Terms about, I'm talking about spirituality.
Well, who gives a damn about spirituality until you establish that there's something truthful in it?
Well, we can only. All of religion is only personal. It's speculation.
Okay, so basically you believe this, and it's your own personal speculation, and you have no rational justification for it.
No, I wouldn't say I have no rational judgment, because what do you believe?
Then
you're going to say I believe. I don't.
Then what's the rational justification? That's what I'm asking.
My rational justification for it is I look at the options and I think to myself that I look at my life and I say I'm 20 years old, I'm a human being, I enjoy all these things of being a human being. I look at other people, I look at the history of the world, and I say to myself rationally, I believe that there is something that I would call God that is behind all of this. I don't think this is all pointless, this is all purposeless, this all just arose. And to me, that seems like a rational point of view.
You have no idea what rational means.
Well, that's your opinion. I think it's very
rational. No, that's a fact. You have no idea what rational means. If you think that, I'm talking about constructing a rational, logical argument that demonstrates something. What you said is, I look around and this is the way I feel about it. Well, how you feel about it has no bearing at all on what's actually true, and it's not relevant to a rational argument.
Okay, but there's never going to be you're talking about proof like that would be in a science book. That's never going to be there. And
how do you know that? How do you know that?
Because we're talking about it's not a scientific claim that I'm talking about. I'm talking about speculation about things that are beyond the realm of science.
No, the mere fact that you are asserting that this is necessarily beyond the realm of science and non-demonstrable means that you are asserting properties about your claim. And these are also irrational properties. You're saying, I don't need to have a rational reason because I'm convinced there can't possibly be one. And then on the other hand, you're saying that you have a rational reason because that's what you think it is. I
didn't say I'm convinced there can't possibly be a rational reason for it. I said I'm convinced there can't be a demonstrable reason in the scientific way that you are looking for.
In other words, rational, which is why I said you have no idea what rational means.
I've never seen a definition of rational that says has to be a scientific explanation for it. It's what I look at and what I believe.
You were making claims about the universe earlier. I mean, we can test claims about the universe because we're part of the universe. We can test some claims at least.
You're doing the same thing with the word rational that Ray Comfort does with the word logic. He uses the word logic when he really means common sense or opinion. He has no idea what logic means or anything about it. And when I talk about a rational argument, I'm talking about a logical argument that's based on evidence, one that can be followed, one that is not simply a matter of personal preference or opinion. You're talking.
But that's what
you're talking.
You know that nobody's ever going to come with a scientific.
I don't know that at all, and I find it absolutely
Sure.
absurd that you think that it's okay to assert that without offering evidence for it.
No, I'm saying you know that there's not going to be a scientific proof in the way that you want. And
I
you're
just
using it as
told you, no, I don't fucking know that. Do you just not listen to what I'm saying? You're telling me what I know, and I'm saying, no, I don't know that. That is a patently absurd assertion that requires knowledge that you or neither of us have about whether or not these answers are ultimately possible to discern. I don't know that it's not possible. How do you know it's not possible?
Because I know that when we talk about spirituality and religion, you're talking about things that are not that do not coexist with science in the way that you mean it. I mean, nobody's going to go out there and get...
So religious
like,
claims have no basis in the real world?
No,
Are
there's
you admitting
basis
that?
There's certain things that are basis in the real, certain manifestations, but if you're talking about prove over a phone discussion why you believe in this God rationally with a scientific proof, the way somebody would prove a geometric equation, that's never going to happen.
How do you know that it's never going to happen? Are you godlike? Are you omniscient?
Well,
Okay, I mean, you know what I'm saying.
No, I don't. The problem is that you also don't know what I'm saying, and you don't know what rational means. I've tried to explain this very simply. Yes, we are looking for different levels of proof. We have different standards of evidence. You are willing to accept as a standard of evidence the I can't think of anything better argument, and I'm not.
No, it's not that I can't think of anything better. It's
Yes,
that
it
this
is.
No. I'm saying when I said that I look at it and I didn't ever said I look at the universe and I look at other people and my experience of consciousness and everything like that, and I come up with God because I can't think of anything else.
No, what you said, almost word for word, and we can rewind this later if we need to, is that you look at the possible answers, and God is the one that's most plausible.
Right.
Well, how do you know that you've evaluated all the possible answers?
I could say this. I could say to you that how do you know you've? I mean, everybody.
I don't know, and I've never claimed to have evaluated all the possible answers. That's why I think your absurd assertion that we can't know tells us more about your position than you think it does. I don't make that assertion that we can't know.
I never said we can't know. I said it can't be proved in the scientific way that you want it to be. That you're insisting it has to be.
Right. So how do you know that's
pretty
true?
big claim.
That's a huge claim. How do you know that's true?
How do I know that it can't be that it can't be proved or disproved scientifically?
Yes.
Because how would anybody go out and test with a microscope whether or not? I mean, it's
so because you can't think of a way.
You could have a study about prayer and whether prayer works.
That doesn't matter because you can't think of a way. You're asserting that you know it can't be done. How arrogant is that?
No. That again, you're twisting what I never. Okay, I'm saying that this is a claim that, as far as I can see, is not a scientific claim.
As far as I can see, I rest my fucking case. I
Just
shut
because you
him down
disagree with
right
my point
fucking
is-
now. Hang up on his ass.
Yes, sir.
You are the most dishonest caller I've had, and it's so frustrating because we could have had a good conversation. You used the exact fucking words that I needed you to use to prove the point that I was saying a minute ago. Oh my God. I can't think of anything else. This is what I'm trying to say. You and I probably agree on a great many things. I'm assuming you're probably still watching the stream if I haven't pissed you off to some extent. I apologize, but this is so monumentally fucking frustrating when I get calls like this over and over and over again, where I'm trying to actually get to where we disagree. And the meat of it, where we do disagree, and I already got to this a while ago, is that we're willing to accept different standards of evidence with regard to what we claim to know or believe or understand about reality. And in your case, it's an argument from ignorance. It's an argument from personal incredulity. It's an I can't think of anything better, so this is the answer I'm going to accept, followed by the outlandish, unsupported, completely arrogant assertion that you are so understanding of this that you know that there will never be the type of proof that would satisfy me. You don't know that. You don't know what I know. You don't know what rational is, and we're done for the week. Thanks to everybody for hanging out. A little bit extra after the call. We're going to Pluckers. Thanks to the folks on the interwebs who I'm sure just, I don't know, somebody probably came from that, but I appreciate it. And I have a bird I have to put up and food to
No animals were harmed during that.
There's one final lady who's been waiting for quite a while. I don't know if you want to get to her real quick or
No, I'm done.
Okay.
Thank her. Apologize. We're way over time for the show. And make a note. See if we can get her on first next week.